Hello, you're watching Gabbin about Games, and if you didn't nod off watching the prior episode, it's myself, Miquel Sanchez.
And Viper UK 98.
And we are going to be talking today about video games. Are video games harder today? So both Viper and myself have played video games now for probably 20, 25 years, give or take, depending on what you consider the starting point of gaming. So what do you think, Viper? Are games today harder? And I think when we're discussing harder, I think we're discussing classic hard games such as the Nintendo, the Master System, versus modern hard games such as Dark Souls or things of that nature.
So the way I look at it to begin with is generation has changed. People have changed. So you kids back 20 years ago, games on consoles, on PCs, things like that, it was all sort of a new big thing. So they were having to learn how to actually even interact with these things. These days, those kind of games are actually more almost second nature to the kids. They know how to do them almost instinctively, it would appear. So, but at the same time, I would actually say that current games, the way that it's actually gone is that standard games are actually fairly easy. Your bog standard everyday games that have come out on a regular basis, the game almost pushes you to get to the end and get to the win, and so you can see the end content. And it's more of a very, very specific sort of model of gaming where they actually are trying to make it very difficult for you. So the general games that you get these days are very, very easy. And you have to go for the sort of niche products that are actually much harder. So Dark Souls, it's a niche product. It's a game that is designed to kill you at every possible chance. You go out and buy pretty much any other game. I went and I played Dragon Age Inquisition, which I've just completed. The actual story mode on that is actually pretty easy, and you'll get through it quite quickly. It's not that difficult. So unless you're going for a game where you want it to be difficult, most games these days, the generic games these days, are actually miles easier because the developers want to push you to get to see their end content.
I tend to agree. Yeah, you're exactly right. Game difficulty these days, games that are difficult and are released as difficult are usually, the news spreads around pretty quickly that they are difficult games. Whereas back in the 80s and 90s, games were not advertised as being hard or difficult. They were just what they were. The main difference I would make is that in the early Mario games, you had Mario 1, 2 and 3 on the Nintendo. As a kid, I never completed any of them. And the main difficulty in a Mario game, even compared to modern Mario, this is where even that's transitioned, is that in the original Mario, you had to get through the whole level, start to finish, in one go. You might get a mushroom, so you might get a little bit of a do-over, but if you die, that is it. You have to go right back to where you started. I think one major difference as well is that when it was introduced into games that you would have a difficulty setting, I can't recall the first time I ever came across a proper difficulty setting in a video game. I think probably it would have been on a real-time strategy on the PC in the mid-90s. That was the first time that I ever came across the opportunity of setting a difficulty within a game. For my original Nintendo, there were very few games that I actually completed entirely. The original Zelda on the Nintendo, by modern standards, an incredibly difficult game. Ninja Turtles on the original Nintendo, very, very difficult game. Very few people I know complete. Most of the completions on that game, I think, have been within the last 10 years of people revisiting it just to see how difficult it was. So are games harder now? You will have a portion of people that will say, yes, games such as Dark Souls, etc., are a lot harder because you die a lot. I would throw back at you. If you think you die a lot in Dark Souls, you need to get an emulator, get on the original Nintendo, and see what the original Marios and the original NES games were like. If you can complete Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, you will know what a hard game is. So it could be culturally, but I don't think games. I think games are easier, but I would add the caveat that I think developers just prefer these days to make games less punishing and frustrating. Because the ultimate thing is that if you're annoying the people that are playing it, they're just going to put it down and pick something else up. And if you've made a game, that's the last.
Absolutely. Especially with the market that we've got these days, where the games are so readily available, they can just drop one game and move on to something else with immediate ease.